It's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast with your host, Jamie Dew, Chief Librarian Thomas Sena, and featuring Matt Ardill. And now, curator of the hall, Jamie Dew.
Oh boy, thank you so much, Doug the Nats. It's me, Jamie Dew here, the host and curator of the SNL Hall of Fame and SNL Hall of Fame podcast. I'm glad you could make it this week. Before you enter the hall, though, would you please wipe your feet? I don't know why I said that so sultry. Your feet are dirty, you know. There's nothing sultry about that. So, you know, there's that. The SNL Hall of Fame podcast is a weekly affair. Each week we take a deep dive into the career of a former cast member, host, musical guest, or writer, and add them to the ballot for your consideration. Once the 30 nominees have been announced, we turn to you, the listener, to vote for the most deserving and determine who will be enshrined for perpetuity. This week we are talking Paula Pell. This is going to be an interesting one. Paula Pell, writer for the show for a number of years. Not going to be an obvious one, but when you dig deep here and listen to what our friend Matt says in his Minutia Minute and what Dave Buckman reveals in the conversation he has with Thomas Sena, then the stage starts to be set that this is a real player. And this is somebody that needs to be, you know, thought of in a transcendent sort of way, not just another cog in the wheel, but this is somebody who elevated their game and elevated the games of many others in the hallowed halls of Royal 30 Rockefeller Center. So there's that. Let's jump right into Matt's Minutia Minute so we can get to the conversation between Thomas and Dave. Hello, Matt.
Hello, Jamie.
What's going on this week?
Well, I am looking forward to talking about one of my favorite writers, Paula Pell.
Paula Pell. Great. Okay, well, let's hear what you have to say in your Minutia Minute.
Yeah, so Paula, born April 15th, 1963, her first episode was September 30th, 1995. That's season 21. So that's when Jim Brewer, Will Ferrell, Daryl Hammond. So that cast, you know, we had Chris Kattan, and Colin Quinn and Fred Wolf as the featured players. Her last show that she wrote for was May 17th, 2014, season 39. So she wrote for the show on and off for 18 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so she took 1 year off in there, but you know, she's created some really awesome characters. Debbie Downer, the Spartan Cheerleaders, Justin Timberlake's Dancing Omelet, that was her creation. But yeah, she's one of those powerhouse writers that that's only started to come to the public forefront with people recognizing her talent, but she was always respected in the writers' room. She was the second woman head writer after Tina Fey, one of only 5 women head writers. And when she got the call, she was actually working as a singer and dancer at Universal Studios in Orlando. So she literally hopped on a plane the next day from Universal and went to work in New York.
I guess so. Holy.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say that's a step up in the entertainment world from a singer dancer at a showcase in Florida to one of the most historic comedy stages in the world. Yeah, and I mean, and she's one of the things is she's always been super respected. Tina Fey has worked with her on multiple projects. So has Amy Poehler. Tina Fey, in her biography, talks about one of her proudest moments is when she really fought for one of Paula's sketches, classic Kotex, and how that's kind of one of her defining moments as a head writer is fighting for these other writers to have their voice and get their sketches in. But yeah, I mean, she's run Writers Guild of America for Best Comedy Series, working on 30 Rock, Primetime Creative Awards for SNL, WGA Awards for SNL. She's just been a real workhorse of a comedian. She's now in Girls Five Eva, which is moving to Netflix. Yep. It was on Peacock, but another Tina Fey project, and she sings and dances on that still. So she's amazing.
Full circle.
Yeah, exactly.
You weave a fine tale, Matt.
Well, she is an amazing, funny comedian, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about her time on SNL.
So Paula Pell, I'm super excited about this episode. I think she was one of the unsung heroes when she was on SNL. She wasn't front and center, but she was so instrumental in the show's renaissance in the late 90s, and her impact spanned longer than almost anyone in that era. So Dave Buckman, I'm curious, why did Paula Pell stick out to you when thinking about nominees for the SNL Hall of Fame?
Oh, I think she's just an amazing writer. Her body of work, her work ethic, her support by everybody that worked with her. She was there for 18 years. And just to put 18 years in perspective, this is Keenan's 18th season that we're taping this right now.
Wow.
So as long as Keenan's been a cast member, and we all talk about that right now, right?
Yeah.
That's how long Paula Pell was in the writer's room and putting up championship style sketches and repeatable characters. Everybody that was there agrees that she was the funniest while they were there. And you can tell by her body of work that I'm going to read you off a list of the other things she's worked on before we get into the SNL stuff. But this is what she's done post SNL. And you see if you can tell me a common theme between all these titles. We got Girls Five Eva. We got AP Bio. We got Mapleworth Murders. We got Parks and Rec, documentary now, The Colin Quinn Show, Funny or Die Presents, 30 Rock, Inside Out, Big Mouth, Bless the Hearts, Sisters, Other People, Wine Country, Bridesmaids, Anchorman 2.
Jeez. Yeah. I mean, all great
40.
comedies. Yeah. All great comedies. A lot of SNL tie-ins.
A lot of SNL alumni hire Paula Pell when they want to bring the funny, whether that's producing, whether that's writing, whether that's acting. You bring in Paula Pell and you're going to make it a better project.
Yeah.
That is why Paula Pell deserves to be in the SNL Hall of Fame. And on a personal note, this is why I love her, right? She's an entertainer and a writer. She's smart and she's dirty. She has a distinct voice and a writing style, and she's relatable. She's warm and she's biting. She's specific and she's broad with her comedy. She's inappropriate and completely appropriate, and her work just speaks for herself.
Definitely. And I think it's interesting you brought up the first aspect is, being a performer and a writer. She was actually interested in being a performer on SNL, right?
She thought she was going to be a writer. She thought she was going to be a performer. Right. And they brought her up because she was performing live in Orlando. She was at Disney performing at the private island at Disney.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, what's it called? It's like doing, Pleasure Island. And the Pleasure Island, which is not as sexy as it sounds. It's more like Branson than Vegas. And it's like this wholesome New Year's Eve every night. If you've seen The Simpsons, that's what it's like. A lot of improvisation, a lot of radio shows, a lot of singing. So she was seasoned by the time SNL was doing a cast changeover. This was the year they brought in Adam McKay. This is the year they brought in Will Ferrell. This is the year they brought in Sherry O'Terry. This was Daryl Hammond's first year. Steve Higgins is the new head writer, and they find her in Orlando, Florida.
That was an interesting era of SNL. I mean, we talk about the Saturday Night Dead headlines throughout SNL's history. That was one of the moments where that was actually close to being legit. That was Sandler's last season and Farley's last season. Sort of like the bad boys were kind of leading the show, and probably not always in the best direction. So you're right. Like, she came in that really big changeover season.
This crew was like, this is it. We got to deliver, or this thing is done. And it's happened a couple, like, I think Lovitz kind of saved it in 85.
Yeah.
And Will Ferrell and Paula Pell and this crew and Adam McKay saved it in this era.
Yeah, so she started in 1995, as you mentioned. So we can get into a little bit of her SNL work. What are some sketches? Like, where do you kind of want to go as far as Paula Pell? I mean, she's behind some stuff that people probably don't even realize that she played a big role in.
And these are the things that when you look on a montage of Saturday Night Live characters, one, if not many, are there. Mm-hmm. So let me just read you this list of memorable things she's created. Classic Kotex commercial, Tylenol BM with Alec Baldwin, the boy band 6 Degrees Celsius, Appalachian Emergency Room, Justin Timberlake's Bring It On Down to Whateverville mascot, the first Sheila Sauvage sketch, which is actually based on Paula Pell's mother.
And that was Kate McKinnon.
Kate McKinnon's.
Yep.
The Culps, which is Anna Gasteyer and Will Ferrell at the piano. Gilly, Spartan Cheerleaders, and Debbie effing Downer.
That's quite the heavy hitter lineup that people didn't realize that Paula Pell was behind. So the cheerleaders, I think, were super important to SNL. As we had mentioned, that was an era of the show that really needed to hit some home runs, and they really needed to get national attention. And I think the cheerleaders were some of the first characters to really do that. I mean, Sherry O'Terry and Will Ferrell came up with these characters, but in talking about Paula Pell, I think one of her big strengths that she showed here with these characters was helping people punch up their ideas and really peppering it with a lot of color. So what did you make of the cheerleaders back then?
Back then, I was happy that Saturday Night Live was going to be okay. I felt like stability, somebody you can come back and count on, like kind of the way Billy Crystal would use those characters week to week in his season, or just something that you can kind of like, or Eddie Murphy would have those recurring characters. You can kind of get a sense of like, oh, these people are working together in different combinations, twosomes, to kind of like capture America together. And Paula Pell, that sense of collaboration, that sense of down to earthness, the people that she creates are people we all know in our society. They're just, amplified a little bit, a little more cartoonish than usual. But we all know these cheerleaders. We all know a Debbie Downer. We all know a pair of the Culps. We all know a Sheila Sauvage somewhere out there. These are just heightened versions of those people. And she's so good at creating those kind of relationships and kind of fun things, the hooks, if you will, those the dance choreographies and rhymes and cheers that they would have to write each time,
Oh my God, Craig! Do you realize the tryouts are in 7 hours?
Yes.
I can't believe we snuck into the gym to practice our cheers. Yeah. How did you learn to Jimmy a door?
Where else? MacGyver. I used my retainer and a small piece of twine.
Good work. You want to kick it?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Spartan checkup!
Take a chance, drop your pants, pee in the cup. Dr. Spartan's in the house and he will fix you up. Break it down now. Spartan fever. Taking off. Fever's rising. Time to cough.
It's fun and engaging, and it's, it can get a little bit template-ish, but those sketches work on a level because they use patterns and they use call and response and they break up the activity with energy. And it was just fun. It was just fun. Like Dana Carvey fun.
I think when people describe sketches as having a template or they know all the beats, I think sometimes they mean it in a negative way, but it's actually not. I think whether people and viewers know it or not, I think they enjoy knowing the beats
Of course.
of sketches. It's a meditative kind of thing. So the cheerleaders had that. We talk about Stefan, who's like one of the most loved characters in SNL history. We all knew the beats of the Stefan Weekend Update pieces. What's up with that? So there's just so many examples of, I think when these sketches have those beats, it's sort of meditative, it's comforting, and we can
They're
kind of play
songs.
along with them. They're songs, exactly.
They're songs, and the recurring ones are sonnets. You know what I mean? Like they're a way for us to communicate with each other, bond over certain kind of rhythms. And I don't mind hearing the same song 100 times. I don't mind hearing songs that sound similar to each other, like in a concept album.
Yeah.
You know, you can string all the all of the culps together to make an album of just fun melodies that are all just like, it can make its own concept album. Like it's okay to repeat templates because it's people like that. It's just a chorus, verse, chorus energy.
You can speak on that, especially being a sketch comedian yourself and being in the sketch comedy world. And I think from a viewer's perspective, it's, even though we know the beats, it's about the jokes. If the jokes are good, that's what matters. And Paula Pell seemed like a master of the jokes. She seemed like a master of filling in those beats and peppering things with just the perfect.
She's so specific.
Yeah.
You know, the characters are broad, but the jokes are specific. And I think that's what makes a Paula Pell sketch as somebody who can kind of step back and see how a sketch is created or put together. It's masterful how broad these characters can go and be very specific with their choices and their references that kind of pull you in as to what kind of person they are when they're not in the sketch. I know who the cheerleaders are when they're not in the sketch. I know who Debbie Downer is and the choices that she would make when she's not in the sketch. I could go around acting like Gilly because I know how Gilly responds to everything. It's a very specific point of view that each of these characters have, and they don't deviate from it. You know, they each have their own thesis statement, and you can count on them for that behavior. That's what makes them comedic characters. You can count on them for this very specific fatal flaw that each of them have that will probably kill them eventually because it'll be so annoying to somebody.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I get the feeling that Paula Pell knew that too. She knew these characters. There was, I think she was efficient. She and Will Ferrell, Sherry O'Terry, whoever else was writing these sketches, they were so efficient at explaining who these characters were. Like with the cheerleaders, just by the simple fact that they weren't on the official cheerleading squad. You know a lot about them with just that one little piece of information.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they had ambitions and we knew their dreams and we were sharing the dream with them, you know?
Yeah.
Think about the Appalachian Emergency Room where I just keep imagining what that town must be like now after the opioid crisis, but there's so many just peppered recurring characters within that little small community, and they would all have so much fun just playing new ones and having repeatable ones, and it just populated a world where we never got to see this town outside of this one emergency room shift that Seth Meyers had to work we always get Seth Meyers' shift for some reason.
Yeah, exactly.
But each of those characters are so well defined in a matter of one line of dialogue. We know everything about them.
Well, here's how things stacked up. My wife here was out on the porch spray painting some curtains for our van.
Yeah, I don't like people picking in the back of my van.
And I was way up on top of the roof taking the Christmas lights down.
Yeah, we like to keep the Christmas lights up until Halloween.
So here I was directly above where she was doing a fancy project, and don't you know them paint fumes crawled right up and intoxicated me.
Yeah, he was pretty intoxicated before he got up there.
That's Paula Pell's genius, that she can have you pull you into somebody's point of view with a line of dialogue because it's so specific.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think a lot of writers throughout the show's history in many ways you can hear their voice. We did an episode earlier this season on Jack Handy, who has a super specific voice. You know it's Jack Handy. A lot of other Michael O'Donoghue has his voice, good or bad. He has his voice. What would you say makes Paula Pell like distinct as a writer? Like, what traits of Paula Pell really stick out to you?
Jack Handy and Michael O'Donoghue are not relatable. They are distinct and unique and geniuses, and sometimes evil geniuses. Dennis Miller, also very distinct, right? But also not very relatable. I have to pay attention to their point of view in order to get the joke. When Paula Pell writes in her very distinctive point of view, I know it's a Paula Pell vibe when I'm watching the sketch, and it's completely relatable humor. It's something that I've experienced also. I don't have to like get in the mind of Paula Pell to understand the joke. I have to be myself and I get the joke because these are people that I can see in my everyday life.
Yeah, so we almost share a mind with Paula Pell, and that's how we understand the joke. Instead of having to get in her mind, we sort of cohabitate the same mind.
She's already in our mind. She already knows how all of us work, and she knows how to exploit that part for humor.
Yeah.
And God bless her for doing that.
Yeah, and she was so great at collaborating too. We had mentioned collaborating with Will Ferrell and Sherry O'Terry in the Cheerleaders. The Culps, again, Will Ferrell, but on a gas dyer. So, you know, they had these characters.
Perfect for those two. It's like a perfect, like exactly how you couldn't write a better sketch for the two of them together. I don't think, for the characters to play together.
You know, college is a time in which parents have to let go, stand back, and watch the seeds they've planted blossom.
So with that in mind, we'd like to share a few lessons we've learned from the University of Getting Down. Megan, honey, this is for you.
Oh, crap.
1, 2, 3, 4. She's a very kinky girl.
She's a kinky girl.
The kind you don't take home to mother.
No, you don't want to take her home.
She will never let your spirits down. Once you get her off the street,
She's a super freak.
she's a super freak. Super freak. She's super freaky.
So spot on their chemistry, their interaction, what is funniest about each of them in that musical world, and to be able to have them collaborate like that. It's great, and it's wonderful, and the songs are so funny, and I bet they had a hell of a fun time writing those things.
Oh, yeah.
But also, not only that collaboration, but think about, she's collaborating with Justin Timberlake on these Bring It On Down to Whateverville mascot songs, right?
Who's hungry for a rootin' tootin'
Somebody
fresh?
say they were hungry. We got eggs. We know how to cook them. Bring it on in, I'm a bell.
She's going up against one of the premier songwriters and entertainers of our time and collaborating on a sketch that makes him look so silly and funny, and he's having the time of his life, and he gets a recurring character. How many hosts get recurring characters? Not many.
Yeah.
And not even many in the
trust.
Five Timers Club have recurring characters. That's even a special thing in itself. Timberlake could do his own best of episode, and she's writing songs with him and bringing out the funny in him, which is amazing.
Yeah, of course, she helped him do Omeleteville was the first one, Homelessville, Liquorville. So all these, vills, all these templates that she collaborated with Justin Timberlake on. And you're right. Like, I think Justin Timberlake probably saw a writer like Paula Pell and felt like she was in his mind, or they shared a mind too. She's such a chameleon in that way. Like, I think she could work with most people and find something.
Well, here's where she got that. Here's where she got that experience. I'll tell you, when she was working at Disney, she was one of the people that would walk around in character and do full-on characters with regular everyday people. She would improvise with everybody. She would do commedia dell'arte improvisations around the streets, very physical comedy, but also interacting and doing voices and characters in those theme parks. So she got to meet a lot of Americans face to face, and some of them would play with her and some of them would hang out with her. And, she had a seasoned training ground of improvisation, character work, interactions, people, Americans, cross-section of humanity in the time before she got up to Saturday Night Live. And she brought all that with her. You match that with Will Ferrell's sheer genius for using volume and status to create comedy, with Adam McKay's satire. The show that Adam McKay had just finished at Second City was maybe one of the most biting satires they'd ever produced, and to this day and since. And he brings that energy to Saturday Night Live, and the three of them combined, and then literally a year later, Tina Fey shows up, and boom, the whole thing is back to respectability. Of course, we can't cancel this. This is an institution. These are stars. NBC got their shit together. They started locking these people down to contracts. We lost Sandler. Sandler's blowing up. Let's lock in these future geniuses and brand them Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Losing it. And that's what saved. And that's where the entire thing shifted from, is this going to get, the writing's bad. Maybe it'll get canceled too. This will never end and we're going on forever. Shifted into a different gear.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because I'm a certain age and the Will Ferrell, Paula Pell kind of era was when I was in high school, but it seemed to me that even more so than the great era of the late 80s and early 90s, that specific Will Ferrell, Paula Pell era of SNL appealed to a broader audience. I mean, I think my favorite era is probably still like the early 90s and such, but I don't think that maybe had as much of a broad appeal
Here's why.
Across
Paula
ages.
Pell.
Paula Pell. Yeah,
Think about what would have happened if Paula Pell and Tina Fey weren't there. If Paula Pell hadn't squeaked that door open for Tina Fey to take over, because no way Tina Fey's coming in there. I mean, she was going to take over regardless, but Paula Pell had a year or two ahead of her and kind of like got that voice in there. Because if Paula Pell was not in that original crew that came in, it was just Will Ferrell screaming a lot and Adam McKay's anger mixing, and that's all we had. We didn't have Paula Pell just like bringing the charm and the sweet and the funny. At the same time, I don't think it would have been quite as relatable. It would have still been a boys' club. And I think she kicked that door wide open for an amazing run of female-focused, centered, forward comedy.
Yeah, that's such a great point. We needed that other flavor. I mean, we all love Will Ferrell, but if it was just him in and of himself,
Get off the shed.
There was a lot of bubbling. There's a lot of bubbling anger and a lot of Will Ferrell's performances, which is great. But you needed somebody like Paula Pell to really bring out the more silly, relatable side of someone like Will Ferrell.
Yes. Like Emily Spivey does with Bless the Hearts. It's that kind of emotional pull.
And I was wondering, we had talked about her, having a training ground as a performer and all that. She was surprised when she only got offered a writing job on SNL. I was wondering, just kind of play SNL fan sort of fiction, I guess, in a way. How do you think she would have done as a performer on SNL? Like, what would her role have been if she did get hired as a performer? I don't know that America was
ready for her at that time.
Why is that?
I'm trying to think because it was such a bro-y energy in the country. Because this was pre-Lewinsky, just pre-Lewinsky. And it was just very bro-y. Farley and Sandler on top of the box office. Yeah, I wonder if she'd have been able to have broken through. I want to think that she would have, of course, because the characters that she would have come up with for herself would have been amazing. She would have been in the Culps. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She would have been in that cheerleader sketch. Or maybe not, because that was Cheryl Terry's character. But she would have contributed a new era of what female sketch comedy was, because I think up until then, female sketch comedy was you needed one blonde and one brunette, maybe one minority, and they should have different color hair, and one should be pretty and one should be not as pretty.
Yeah.
And that was how women were viewed in sketch comedy at the time. She would have been completely different from everybody else that was writing their own sketch comedy. 100%. It would have been a completely different voice. I would have hoped that she would have It was also a very weird, hard time to be gay in show business as well. I mean, this is also pre-Ellen, and maybe it was pre-Ellen. When did Ellen?
It was around the same time. I think Ellen maybe came out on her show, let's say 97-ish.
Yeah, it was around that time, and that was huge.
Oh, that was a huge deal.
That was huge.
Looking back from 2020 eyes, that would seem ridiculous that people were making such a big deal about that. But at the time, you're right.
That was like 3 or 4 weeks of public talking about it on CNN, like before and after, and that was, and to have somebody who was out. I mean, of course, Terry Sweeney was out, but he only lasted 1 season, and try as unbelievably talented. I just watched that season. Unbelievably talented as Terry Sweeney was, and as hard as he was trying, he could not break through. And he was a veteran. He had written for the show at that point. Anyway, I wonder if she would have had to suppress that side of her, or if she would have gone straight for it.
I think in a way she did suppress it behind the scenes, like not too much. I don't think she felt bullied behind the scenes, like she couldn't talk about it, but she just never really lived too open until, I mean, she started in 1995, and as she tells it, she kind of came out officially to her coworkers in 2001 when they were writing the Homosil. Do you remember that Homosil fake ad? Yeah, that was wonderful. So that aired in February of 2001, and as she tells it, James Anderson was writing that sketch, and Paula Pell was, of course, in the writer's room helping to punch it up. And they were wondering during the writing process, some were wondering if it was okay to air that Homosil ad. And Paula finally kind of voiced her opinion and said, well, I'm gay, and I'm telling you right now that this is the most queer-friendly thing that you will ever have on the show. This is perfectly acceptable to air. So she kind of came out to her coworkers to advocate for a sketch that she really believed in.
That was 6 years of working day and night with people.
Right. And I don't know that she, maybe she wasn't afraid to come out totally, but it's maybe something that she never really talked about to everybody. So, but as she tells it, that was, writing that Homosil ad was when she really, expressed it.
And brave. Good for her.
Yeah. Nice. Definitely. And it was for an ad that I remember to this day, 20 years later. That's still such great satire.
Paula, if you're listening to this, thank you for doing that.
For those who haven't seen it, the premise of the ad is helping parents
calm their anxiety.
Quote, unquote. Calm their anxiety when they're realizing that their children are gay. So there's different
7 or 8 years old. So there's 7 or 8 year olds walking around doing kind of gay stereotype-ish things, and their parents are just like, oh no, having this look of regret, oh no, what's happening? And they're getting it, and they're just taking these pills to kind of calm their nerves about what's happening. And it's very funny.
Yeah, the button on that sketch was because it's your problem, not theirs.
Yeah. Yes.
So that was there's nothing wrong with your kid being gay. It's your problem. Here's a product to help you out for this. That's why Paula Pell was advocating for that so much and called it queer friendly.
Drop the fucking mic. That's right.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I would have loved to see Paula Pell's voice as a performer on SNL and have somebody who's gay, other than Terry Sweeney before that, and I think Denitra Vance. Paula
Do we get
Pell.
a Chris Kelly without Paula Pell?
Yeah, right. Wow. So I was thinking about Paula Pell too, in terms of how she was able to collaborate with so many different eras of the show. I mean, there was she was a writer on the show 95 to 2013, so she worked well with. We already mentioned Will Ferrell, Sherry O'Terry, Yana Gasteyer, host Justin Timberlake, but Kristen Wiig was, I think, one of the important collaborations that Paula Pell had.
Yeah, they did Gilly together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was Kristen Wiig's kind of idea. I think she was just talking to Paula Pell and said, I want to do this character who has just a weird dance. And then Paula Pell just sort of started riffing on that. It was just one kernel of an idea for a character.
I mean, when Kristen Wiig comes to you because she has an idea for a character and she wants help with a character that she can't get out, Kristen Wiig can't get a character out of her head. Who does she go to? She goes to Paula Pell.
Exactly.
To pull out maybe her most iconic character, the one that gets Kristen Wiig on T-shirts, on mugs, on SNL montages. Every single montage, like you're gonna have a ghillie in there, of course.
Yeah.
So that's a Hall of Famer sketch for Kristen Wiig, completely given birth to by Paula Pell.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, Kristen Wiig, like I said, had that kernel. Paula Pell helped her flesh it out to like, what if we made Gilly to be this demon child?
Gilly. 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 Did you throw that milk carton?
Sorry.
Her name is Gilly and she's at it again, causing lots of ruckus like a barnyard hen. She's always bringing trouble, her hair is like a bubble. Knock, knock, who's there is Gilly?
Sorry.
That was a lot of Paula Pell's doing, and a lot of people don't realize that. And I think we're getting better about that as far as knowing which writers had a hand in what and giving writers credit for sketches.
Yeah.
But especially in 95, it got better by the time Paula left in 2013, but throughout her tenure, we didn't always have that information as fans. A lot of times you just thought that, a lot of times you just thought either the head writer helped out or the performers wrote entirely.
We didn't have access to the amount of information that we have about Saturday Night Live until the mid 2000s, I think. Like, it was dark. I mean, you had to like research, you had to like go to encyclopedias, you had to buy every book that had the word Saturday Night Live on it to find out more about behind this. Like, I had so many Saturday Night Live behind the scenes, but I had every single one you could possibly find, and I read them all before the internet. And now we get to kind of I know more about how to put on that kind of show than I ever did into the first 25 years of watching it.
I was telling our guest for the Jack Handy episode, Andrew Clark, that we had such little information in the 90s that when I was a kid, I used to think that Jack Handy was a pen name for like Al Franken. Right. Like, I didn't think that Jack Handy was a real person. Of course, we would have known in a split second nowadays that yes, Jack Handy's a real person. But back then, you can still think something like that because you didn't have adequate information. So I think it's nice to see that Paula, when she started, it was still kind of in the dark ages, but by the time she finished, she was getting a little more recognition for what she had a hand in. And you could see that as well in, I don't know if you've seen this, the James Franco behind the scenes documentary about SNL.
I don't know. How do I find that?
I think it's somewhere on YouTube. I think you could find it in the shadows of YouTube somewhere. I've watched it a handful of times. If it's still
That's
on
as good
there.
of a plug it's going to get.
Yeah, exactly. I've watched it a handful of times.
I'd like to see it. I haven't seen it.
It's
I want
good.
to see it.
No, it's really good.
Okay.
And there's a funny moment in that documentary where Paula Pell's sitting at her desk and she's trying to find the right fart for a sketch. So she's like playing different farts, and Paula Pell's looking at the camera and looking whoever's in the room is like, oh, what about this one? I don't know. And she said, does this one overstay its welcome? And she's just kind of making comments on all these different fart sounds for this Kristen Wiig sketch that she's helping to write. And it was just such a great peek into Paula Pell's just sort of demeanor while she's writing. And I think, the internet, things like that SNL documentary by James Franco kind of helped push the writers, I think, a little more into that forefront. But I mean, watching that documentary is so rewarding, even just for that Paula Pell moment alone. It's so good.
I'll look it up now.
She also collaborated, I don't know if you remember the Susie Orman sketches.
Oh,
yeah, with Kristen Wiig. Yeah, she was a collaborator on those as well. And you had brought up a great point about Paula being relatable and it seemed like she had an insight into a lot of people. And she added the details about Susie Orman, that for some reason Susie Orman was into Southwestern decor. Yes. And dressed that way and all of that. And Susie Orman actually visited the show one time and said she loved this character, the sketches that they did on her and stuff. And she said something like, well, I'm not into Southwestern decor, but everything else that you made up about me is actually correct. How did you do that? So she was impressed with Paula Pell and Kristen Wiig for kind of pinpointing a lot of her personality. And I think Paula Pell just can read people, it seems like, so well as a writer.
Yeah, that's her talent. That's her genius.
Yeah, so is there anything else as far as her SNL career and about her that you think we should touch on?
Here's some quotes from people that worked with her. This is from Maya Rudolph. She's been the funniest person we've all known the entire time we worked at Saturday Night Live. All of us. This is an Amy Poehler quote. Paula would be in a room with the funniest people, SNL, cast writers, Alec Baldwin, whatever, name the host, and Paula's the funniest. She's a killer. She's a king. She's a queen king.
Those are people who were around her every single day on the show.
And those are some, maybe those are, I'm going to say that those are the two funniest women that have ever been on Saturday Night Live, I think. Poehler and Maya.
Yeah.
And they're saying that Paula's the funniest.
Yeah.
So I got to bow down. I'm going to bend the knee right here, right now. I'm going to bend the knee to Paula Pell. Put her in the SNL Hall of Fame.
Oh boy, that is great. We should end every episode with an Amy Poehler quote. That was right on target, you know? Really cementing the idea that Paula Pell not only should be nominated here for the SNL Hall of Fame, but should be strongly considered. You've only got 20 votes. It's going to be tough. But Paula Pell, when you think of all those characters that she's behind and all the laughs you've probably had at her writing, unbeknownst to you, it really jumps out at me. Now we're going to play the sketch now that Dave and Thomas talked about in the episode, in their conversation that they had. And it's the Paula Pell sketch called Homicil. This was interesting because, and ultimately the reason this sketch was chosen was because Paula is gay and advocated for moving forward with the Homicil sketch because she said it was maybe the most queer-friendly thing that had been on the show at the time. Saturday Night Live has always been known as, you know, sort of bro culture and very bro-y. And the story that was told in the episode of her, you know, coming out to make the point about this particular sketch shows, you know, that she has conviction and she believes in it. And ultimately what she was feeling was the right thing. So there's that. Let's give it a listen now. This is Homicil.
Do you suffer from inexplicable anxiety? Are you confused and upset? Do you have an overwhelming feeling that you've done something wrong?
Hi, Dad. This is called a double Susie.
You can't control whether he is or isn't, but you can control how it affects you. Homicil can provide relief from parental anxiety disorder. Homicil can help. If you obsess about things you can't change, if you are unable to cope with unforeseen developments,
Look what I made. Isn't it fabulous?
if you avoid prolonged contact with your children due to these overwhelming anxieties,
Who wants creme brulee?
when taken regularly, Homicil dramatically decreases parental anxiety.
We made us touch the goatee.
Homicil. Until you come around. Because it's your problem, not theirs.
Oh boy, that is fantastic. That is a work of art. As a parent of two children, parental anxiety disorder, really rings a bell. Doesn't ring a bell in this particular stratosphere, though. I'm cool. I'm cool with whatever. That's what we've got for you this week on the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you learned a lot from Dave Buckman, our special guest this week. And as always, our friend Matt Ardill with Matt's Minutia Minute, and Thomas Sena, our chief librarian and head converser. He gets into those conversations. That's what I'm looking for. He gets into conversations. Golly gee. Yeah, I don't know if anybody even listens to this part. So if you do, that's great. Rate and review the podcast. That would be really awesome. We would love to get some 5-star reviews and ratings. You can do that anywhere you click one of our links, one of our kite links. So there's that. And that's what I got for you this week. So if you're wandering down the hallway past the Weekend Update exhibit, ready to make a left-hand turn at the llama and turn out the lights on your way past, because the SNL Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Make sure to rate, review, share, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at SNL HOF. This is Doug Denant saying, see you next week.
To podcasts and such.